everyone. Welcome to our very first episode of iPOST, i3L podcast. I'm your host, Pinkan Sumampo from the International Office. Today, science versus culture. Very interesting topic with two awesome speakers, two of the coolest professors of i3L. The Vice Rector of Research and Innovation, Dr. Arli Aditya Parikasit, and the lecturers of i3L School of Business, Andamar Pradipta, Master of Arts. So, hello everyone. How are you?
Hello.
Bapak-bapak.
Good.
So, we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, science versus culture. I have not heard about this two topics, being discussed together. So, let's start with definitions so we can, have a good start of conversation by defining what is science, what is culture. So perhaps the Vice Rector first. What is science?
Okay, so basically, if we talk about science, science is a product of the scientific methodology. So we did there is a observation phase, and there is a analytical phase, inferential phase, and then you conclude what's happened in regards to the social and natural phenomenon. And then usually we did is we write a report about it and we publish it in the scientific journal. So that's basically the very basic definitions of science. Although there are some other definitions in the out there.
Yeah, sure. And how about culture?
Culture, okay. So culture is a very broad thing, actually. So we can't really pinpoint what it is, but the most basic definition of culture is the way we do things, the way we view things, right? It's as simple as that. The way we are based on our social background. So there's a sense of space to it, right? So depending on where we're from, we do things a certain way. So that's that.
The way we do things.
The way we do things.
Okay.
The way we view things.
Okay, interesting.
You don't seem to be satisfied with my answer, Ms. Pinkan. Why?
It's just because it's not the definition that I usually heard, from textbooks, obviously. But we can discuss more on it later.
Yeah.
And but one interesting thing that I noticed from the definitions you just gave us, that actually science is a product of culture, the thinking culture. Yeah, so supposedly science and culture can both actually, go hand in hand. So what would you say about that?
Okay, so the thing is, you need a scientific culture in order to embrace science. So the very start of the scientific culture is here in the library. Okay, so every great civilization, you name it, Mayans, the Caliphate in Baghdad, or even the ancient Egypt, the very center of their civilization is in the library. So in the very beginning, their children already start to learn the library, and their teachers introduce them how the importance of library. So even in the US, the superpower in science, they have the Library of Congress. They have millions of literature in the Library of Congress. So since the very early beginning, if you want to be a scientist, you have to be well acquainted with the library. The very early, from your kindergarten even up to until your college days, and doing things in the library, having some literature discussion in any kind of science, whether it's social humanities or natural science. And then so that's basically it. So you can see that when you lose the library, like what's happened when the Mongols, for instance, the Mongol Empire invade Baghdad and they burn the Baitul Hikmah library, the civilization will dead. So that is the pillars of civilization is our library basically. So we need the scientific culture will grow from it.
And what about you?
Me? Yes, I agree with what Mr. Ali said earlier. Basically, science is a product of culture. So, according to Kuchara Mingran, his by the way, he's the father of anthropology here in Indonesia. Basically, what he said was that there are 7 basic elements of culture, and science is one of them. So basically, each culture, each known culture, has its own system of science. Now, if we're talking about science versus culture, if what we're doing here today is to oppose science and culture, well, I assume that what we're talking about is modern science, which is a product of an amalgam of different cultures, or like what, as we know, like is the more westernized culture versus more traditional cultures. So yeah, so that's my answer.
So interesting. Science is a product of culture, but science is one of the elements of culture. Wow. Okay. I've got, yeah. All right. So we can discuss it again later about that. But the next question is for Parli. So in a simple way, well, this is quite different with what Mr. Andamar has defined culture, but usually we heard that culture is defined as a collection of, complex or abstract lifestyle that is passed down from generation to generation, and then it is believed as the truth, right? How would scientists see that? How would scientists see socially constructed truth?
So I think we can, because I want to speak on behalf of my expertise, because I'm also conducting some research on the natural products,
Yeah.
natural products chemistry. So I mean, each civilization. I mean, even if the civilization as early as the Mayan civilization, ancient Egypt, even up to now, in many different regions in the world, they have this kind of what so-called the indigenous knowledge. The indigenous knowledge in respect to their medicine. They call it as traditional medicine.
Yeah.
So, but the problem with not the problem, the uniqueness of the traditional medicine is it's not well defined in scientific way. I mean, you don't know the exact efficacy of their traditional medicine, and so that's why the modern science is there. So we try to make sense in the way of how the modern science operates. So basically, this traditional knowledge could be beneficial for the society as whole. So I mean, there are some drugs, medications that's inspired from this kind of indigenous knowledge actually, and it's the amount is significant. And this kind of indigenous knowledge is already modified. And there are many modified products in the mass market that's totally inspired from them. So that is so basically we think that the indigenous knowledge is a good thing. Doesn't necessarily against science. And in order for us to respect how their community, so of course there should be I'm not saying profit sharing but benefit sharing. So the society will have the benefits from the products as well.
Indigenous knowledge is kearifan lokal, right, Pak? Yeah. But it's if we talk about kearifan lokal or indigenous knowledge, it seems that science and culture can go hand in hand beautifully. But we also see some things going on in our society, like the part of culture it looks that it against the science, like for example, well, it's not from my culture, but this is one of the most famous one. If we heard about the bus, the martial arts from Sudanese people, it's part of our culture. It's a kearifan lokal, it's an indigenous knowledge, but it's not scientific. How could how
Okay.
anthropologists or
So
see that?
basically, let me go back to like your question first, because you said something about like what do you scientists think of socially constructed knowledge? Well, basically, according to like anthropologists, everything is socially constructed, right?
Yeah.
Because science in itself is a system of different jargons and like things that we perceive and we give names to, right? Now, if we're talking about like whether like some parts of our culture are not necessarily scientific, well, I think according to like people who adhere to like those ideas and say like traditional sciences, well, those are scientific, right? So, well, if the question is whether like science as we know it, right, science as we know in universities can go hand in hand with science that we see in like these different cultures that may not be necessarily of ours, right? Well, if we want to make sure that, well, here in universities we have standards, right? We want everything to be done safely, right? And say like you're talking about the boost, right? If we want to make sure that the boost can be safely done according to our safety standards, we have to think the way they think, right? Basically, we have to give them sort of safety elaboration that they would understand, right? So we can't just say like, oh, well, this is not safe because, like, for example, here we can say that, you can get infected.
Right.
They may not know what getting infected means, right? So in a way, if we want to enforce our standard upon like these people of like these different cultures, we have to understand like different ways to penetrate their understanding and like to make sure that they can also be safe by our standards. But yeah, we need to explain that to them according to their standards. So we can't just say like, oh, this is not scientific. Well, to them it is scientific, right? So we have to find a way that would basically make them understand things the way they understand them, but like those ideas can be brought to our standards. So basically that's that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah, I'm getting like I'm just curious about how it will be implemented when we like actually go, if we like actually do what you say and then like go to like their place and then just explain that what they are doing is not safe, right? But do you think it will kind of like just disrupt or what they've been doing?
Well, yes, definitely. Right.
And then they are okay with that, do you think?
No, they won't be okay with
right.
that.
That's
right,
yeah.
Exactly. So the problem is, should we interfere, right? Yeah. So I think that that's a question that should be questioned first before we actually like say think of ways to like make these different traditional rituals safer, right? So should we actually interfere or should we not?
Curious about how would scientific see that.
So this is kind of, I'm not saying this is off the record, but this is some kind of, not many scientists knows that actually there are some research, some serious researcher doing research in this part. You ever heard about telekinesis? So I know that some countries, I would say they are developed countries, they are doing research in this area. But the thing is, there is no conclusive report, there is no conclusive publications about this field, that whether telekinesis is a real phenomenon or not.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily means that it's not exist. No, they never said that. But there is no conclusive evidence as so far. Doesn't mean that it's not exist. Yeah?
Right.
Something that is not exist doesn't mean that it's not. I mean, something that you cannot report doesn't mean that it's not exist.
Right. Yeah.
Just like the black hole phenomenon, for instance, in physics. Yeah. Up to now, the physicians, the scientists doesn't know what's happened beyond the horizons of the horizon of the black hole. It doesn't mean that beyond the horizon of the black hole there is nothing.
Right. Yeah.
There should be something. But just the law of physics did not touch it there. So it's the same like telekinesis. There is some kind of black hole horizon in it. So yeah, it's still inconclusive. I mean, that is the thing that I can say.
True. I agree. Yeah, I agree. Like there are things that we cannot actually conclude ourselves, even though we have the equipment to do so. For example, because a lot of these sciences, which like we categorize as traditional, like they're very embedded into like psychological experience, right? And these things say like these things can like actually bring joy to these people. Like why should we like conclude like their experience like according to our math, for example, right? So yeah, I agree with Mr. Arlie. I mean, like, I think there are a lot of things that we can't conclude yet. And like these things may or may not be something that we should actually conclude, right? So we can't really define these things. And sometimes I think like we don't really have to define these things, right? Okay. So yeah, basically that's that. Like, for example, here, like, wait. Wow. There's this really painful
what happened?
that I
You
have
the doctor?
to, like, yeah, I should go to the doctor, should I?
Wait,
Should I?
I don't think you need to see a doctor. We
what is
got
that?
something here. It's called Laportia oil, Papua herbal medicated oil. You have something wrong with your muscle or
There's
what?
this really, like, painful sensation here that I feel like somewhere here.
Yeah, it says here relief muscle pain and soreness. I think you can just use it.
Can I try that?
Yeah, instead of going to doctor and pay so
Okay.
That's your
expensive.
doctor.
Right.
That's your doctor.
Oh yeah.
I think this is one of what Pa Arlie said, kearifan lokal or
Yes,
indigenous
localism
knowledge.
is here.
Exactly.
Should I try this? Can I try this?
Sure, yeah,
You
yeah.
should.
Wow.
You should.
Like, should I drink this or what?
No, it's a roll on, man.
You
Like,
should
she's
rub it
like,
on your skin, I think.
Oh, should
Somewhere.
I? Let me try.
yeah, privately.
Ibang coba tuh apa nih, guys? So,
Wow! I feel better.
Wow, instant
Wow.
effect. Wow, just like skincare.
I feel rejuvenized.
Wow.
rejuvenized.
Yeah.
Okay, I think
Wow.
everybody should try it.
What is this
Laportia oil.
called?
Laportia oil. So it's a product of i3L students.
Wow.
They use like daun gatal from Papua. Interesting, right?
Wow. Okay. All right. Very good. Wow. So this is a product developed by i3L students and
Right. Mhm.
marketed by ISB students. Is it?
Yeah, i3L School of
Wow.
Business.
This is very interesting. Wow. Laportea oil. Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. So you feel better now?
I feel much better.
Awesome.
Wow. All right.
Now
Thank
can
you.
we can resume our
Okay.
chit chat then?
Yes.
We shall
let's
feel better.
resume. Okay.
Okay, so I forgot about what to ask. No, no. Okay, so yeah, curious about how would you think, Parley, to see that there are a lot of things from our culture that is not yet concluded by science. Are you okay with that as a scientist? I mean, not to have conclusion. For example, for the black hole, or not to have conclusion, not to know what is actually going on, with for example, the Debus thing or other unscientific, culture. unscientific culture?
Well,
Are you okay with that?
Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, said,
Yeah. Huh?
"Ecce homo, look at him." Because we are human. Him is human. So, ecce homo, it means that we are just human, we have limitations. So we always have limitation in
Yeah.
all the things that we produce from our mind, the culture per se. Science
Yes.
is one of them. So, so, so that's why I know that, for instance, many scientists they try to investigate or doing research on things, many subjects, but up until even many years after they retired and so sorry to say pass away.
Not with anything. It happens. Many things happen. And eventually, some other scientists pass on the torch of this knowledge accumulation to other people. And these people continue research, and this guy was the one who's found, the things that actually his predecessor looked for. So happens many times.
Yeah.
So basically, if you talk about science, it will need many generations to reach our goals in some ways. I will give you some example. Smallpox. It's a pandemic that's already eradicated. During the ancient times, I think it's like a magic, right? It's like a black magic.
Yeah.
So it's like seeds come from nowhere, and I don't know, and then people just died. Eventually, the Chinese and the Turkish they developed. They call it vaccination method. It's inoculation method how to deal with the smallpox. And then there's a British scientist. His name is Edward Jenner. He improved the Chinese and Turkish method. So he found the so-called the vaccination method. But it still needs 200 years, almost 200 years to eradicate smallpox. And Edward Jenner never enjoyed his masterpiece that in the end, this terrible disease is going to be eradicated. You said it COVID.
Yeah.
Now everybody's doing health protocol also, but in 100 years, possibly it will be eradicated by somebody else. So that's why I said, ecce homo. Look at you are human. I mean, even the great Edward Jenner cannot see the smallpox is eradicated. I mean, many people will do it. They are doing research, science, and then eventually they have to realize that they have limitations.
Because as a anthropologist or someone that involves deeply in social or culture, it's easy for you to say that why should we interfere? Why should we say to them to do safer method? But as a scientist, it's kind of distracts or disturbs us sometimes or them. It's okay for you to say why should we interfere culture, but interesting to know how scientists should actually think by according to Parley's answer that we have limitations, like doesn't have to be right now to answer everything or to know everything or to have the conclusion for everything. So it's interesting how actually how we can see actually science and culture can go hand in hand without science people being very cocky or just like say culture is not very scientific or it's stupid things or it's like and it's also nice to see how culture can acknowledge science as one of the elements of how it's built. So to close this, any closing remarks from both of you?
I mean, like, I'm interested in what you just said, basically. Again, science as we know today, like, scientists are like trying their best to like basically improve people's lives for the better, right? I mean, like, there are a lot of things that we can't really explain yet, right? And as you said, like, some things that yeah, some things that like these indigenous people do, like maybe like it, as you said, the word was disturb you, right? As a scientist. But yeah, then again, like life itself is something that is really experiential, right? It's like sometimes like people they just want to experience things, right? And as do scientists, I think, like as you said, like you asked partly, like, does it disturb you as a scientist? Like there are a lot of things that we can't understand yet. Like, well, I think in a way, like that's part of the experience of being a scientist, right? We need that space to dream, right? Like
To imagine.
Right? So I think, well, as science people, we need to still dream and like improve people's lives for the better. So I think that's not something that I can like actually comment on, because like I still like to know, like we can dream. We can still dream and keep dreaming until we eventually perish, right?
Yeah.
So that's that. I think, well, I don't know what to comment, but that's my personal dream, which is to keep dreaming. Yeah. So that's that.
Parley?
So I think I agree with the inquiry from Pandama that we have to keep dreaming.
Yeah.
So Edward Jenner, when he designed his vaccine 200 years ago in Britain, he dreamed that, okay, I'm dreaming that the smallpox pandemic will be gone forever. Of course, it will happen in 200 years more. We need more years, more socialization. We need to build the WHO to enforce the vaccination mandate and all of those things.
Yeah.
But he succeeded.
Yeah.
The same thing with Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk is the inventor of polio vaccines. He dreamed, okay, in the future there should be no people becoming paralyzed because of polio. He almost succeeded because of the COVID-19 pandemics. So it will be some delay because in some countries like in Pakistan and Afghanistan we still have some not pandemic, polio epidemic.
Yeah.
Because the WHO still need to do more efforts there. But it's almost succeeded. It's all started from dreaming. Dream of free of disease, free of pain, free of suffering. That's the dream of every scientist, every life scientist. But it cannot be instant.
Yeah.
Still in times, even for Edward Jenner's case, it's hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Even in some isolated case for Jonas Salk, inventor of polio, we'll need maybe some decades more to eradicate. Yes, we have to keep dreaming.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, thank you very much once again, Bapak, for interesting talk and very, to me, it's eye-opening, and yeah, I hope it's becoming an eye-opener too for the audience. Yeah, thank you for watching and listening to us. Have a great day. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Bye.